again today. This is my second live stream today. Earlier I did a live talk over a muscle tear, a trumpet player, so it wasn't music dystonia related, but it was really great to have that live stream. And now I have Jonathan who's joining me, who's a violinist, and we're going to talk about focal hand dystonia, which he has experience with. And welcome, Jonathan. I just want to say thank you again for being here. I'm really, really, really excited about this. So,
my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us all the way from Sydney. I know it's a whole day ahead. It's like crazy.
It is, yes.
My mind is like blown just thinking about it. Like,
Now, this is always a problem when trying to organize meetings. People forget that you have to add one to the date as well.
Yeah, I'm so lucky that I've had a couple of meetings with people like like in Austria or Germany or somewhere farther away, even Japan. Just privately, and there's been a couple times where I was supposed to meet someone privately and I completely messed up the time and day, so I'm just really glad that things worked out on the correct time.
Yeah.
All right, let me just check and see that this went live on our live stream. It looks like it's going good. Thank you anyone that's joining us and for catching that and staying with us as well. So Jonathan, I have never met before, but I found you online because I was looking for a violin player that had experience with focal hand dystonia. Because oddly enough, I know a couple actually in one of the Facebook groups, but they have the right hand dystonia in the bowing.
Yes, okay,
arm.
yeah, that.
And I haven't really come across anybody that's had it in the left hand. So I as soon as I saw that you were speaking out about your experience, I contacted you because I thought, wow, I've never talked to a violin player about having hand dystonia before, so I think this would be a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think I have the impression that the right hand dystonia is less common, actually.
Oh, maybe that's true. Maybe it's just I happen
because
the only ones in the group or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I did talk to a cellist several years ago who had it in his right hand.
Wow.
So that's fairly unusual, I feel. Because, if you think about it, it's the left hand that has all the really intricate movements, and that's, where the problems occur with dystonia.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because the bowing hand, well, you have to have a little bit of like, way to balance and stuff. But
yeah, exactly.
Like you said, yeah, it's not as intricate. And that's really, it's rare for me I have rarely come across violin players that have this, even though I know there are some out there. And also a percussionist. I interviewed a percussionist. The first person I interviewed was a drummer. And that's really rare too in their hands. So Jonathan, before we start talking about your dystonia experience, I really want to go back to like when you first began music and just to give us a little background on yourself and why you play violin, what helped you get into it.
Right, yeah, I started playing the violin when I was very young. I think I was about 5 when I first picked it up. And it was just something that my parents, made me do for a while. But, I started to enjoy it a lot. And so I decided that I wanted to, be a professional violinist. And so I was born in Hong Kong and I started learning there already. But then when our family moved to Australia, I continued playing the violin through to the end of high school. And then when I graduated high school, I decided I wanted really to be a professional musician. And I went into the Sydney Conservatorium. So that is one of the major music schools here in Australia.
Yeah, I know. And it's such a great school. I mean, there's so many really awesome musicians that come out of it. I know for horn players, I feel like all the best horn players in history have been in Australia, like Barry Tuckwell.
Barry Tuckwell, yeah, definitely.
Andrew Bain, who's the principal horn of the LA Phil right now. And I'm thinking of someone else, and there's one other person I really love from there. But yeah, you guys are great.
Yeah, so I was doing competitions when I was fairly young, like in my teens, definitely, like 14, 15. I mean, nothing massive. I think my biggest success, though, I did win a national competition in Australia. And I think that's when I decided, I perhaps this could be for me. So I continued doing music quite seriously.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing.
Go on.
So when you decided to study music and everything, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, when you went into studying music, how did you have a lot of teachers then, or did you just primarily have like one teacher that you started studying with?
Yeah, I did not have that many teachers. So I had one teacher in Hong Kong, and then I had two during my time in Australia. So I I think that was quite good because it had some stability for my learning. So I, throughout my entire uh, music learning, I had essentially just four teachers, including the one at the university, of course. That was Professor Ole Byrne, who is still teaching there, which is great.
Oh wow, that's really great, Jonathan. And I just have to say the last guy I interviewed was also named Jonathan, so my
Oh,
brain
okay.
is
That's
playing a
nice.
trick on me. I'm like, wait. But no, thank you for sharing your background with us. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the violin and when you started to experience kind of focal hand dystonia symptoms. When would you say about it started happening, and what were you doing at the time, like as far as when you were in school, were you out of school, what was going on?
Right. So I think compared to other people who have dystonia, I got it fairly young. So I actually remember exactly when I started to notice something was going wrong. This was, I think, back in 2012, I would say. So towards the end of my bachelor's degree. And I was doing a recording session. I even remember what piece it was. It was a Brahms sonata with piano. And I distinctly remember something feeling very strange in my left hand. So at the time, I thought it was, oh, it's just the usual stress kind of thing. I'll just, take it easy for the next week. But then it didn't get better. And that's when I realized there was something more serious than that, than just the usual, stress symptoms.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so sorry. And I always feel so bad for anyone that has to go through this, because it's just, it's not a fun thing to go through, and it's not a fun thing to cope with as well, for such a long time
Yeah, but
to.
the weird thing is that I could still play fairly well. Like even so, the following year was my graduation year for the bachelor's degree, and I completed everything that I needed to do that year, so including my final recital and all that. But it was definitely like kind of it was definitely a bit of a struggle, to be honest, even though it may not have appeared that way to the audience.
Oh my gosh. And I know exactly how you feel, because I also got focal embouchure dystonia while
Yeah,
I was finishing up well, I was in my junior year of college. Technically, it would be
yeah.
called my junior year. But it was actually my like my because I was a very non-traditional student, so I started studying
Okay,
horn in 2000. Well, I started studying horn, actually began horn when I was 15 in
okay.
2001, and then started college in 2002, and then was on and off again, and finally earned my degree in 2010. So it was like between then and 2010 I went to 3 different universities and
Okay.
studied with 5 different horn
Mm.
professors. So when I say junior year, it was like 8 years in.
Yeah.
But like you, it was just really frustrating because it's near the end of your undergrad. I'm sure
Yeah.
you were excited to try to move on and keep
Yeah,
building
exactly.
from there, and then it's like, what the heck? Oh my.
So just for in case of someone from Australia listening in, junior year I think would be our third year, right? Because you start with freshman, and then what's the next year after that?
Sophomore.
Sophomore. Yeah, okay. And then so that would be around the same time that I started noticing symptoms
Hmm.
in my third year of undergrad. Yeah.
When you first started noticing symptoms, like what was kind of happening with your hand? Did you start to kind of feel like this a resistance in your fingers, or was it a tension in a certain area of your hand, or
Yeah,
um,
it started something that's very subtle. It was just a little bit of lack of control in the vibrato. So the vibrato is perhaps one of the most delicate movements that we do. So as I mentioned already, like I don't think people in the audience would have noticed it, but I certainly felt that there is something not under control in that vibrato movement. And yeah, so because it's so subtle, I didn't think that it was too serious, but then it started to become more serious because then I started, for example, losing control of my second finger. Then I knew it was not just a stress thing.
And with your second finger, did it start to do weird things? Does it do, because I know some people have flexion where it curls inwards,
Yeah.
and then extension where it just kind of pokes out, and then there's hyperextension, which is where it's just way up here and it can't go down. Did you
Yeah.
experience any of that in your hand?
Yes. So when the symptoms began, I noticed that the second finger would kind of refuse to stay on the string. So it was kind of like this problem here. And all the other fingers were fine. It was just the second finger.
Oh my gosh, that's so frustrating. When I interviewed Alex Klein, the oboe player, he was telling me how, he said, I was playing like I think he's trying to play an A, and he's played a B instead, and his second finger is supposed to go down for the A, and
Right.
in his brain he was like, my second finger is down, but then when he looked, it like actually wasn't. He's like, it just wouldn't go down, and he's like, I had to really force it to. So yeah, that's really frustrating. And as it started to occur, did you kind of know what was going on, or were you kind of like really confused and like, I have no idea what's going on with me?
Yeah, at the beginning, I really didn't have a clue what was going on. But of course, I started to look up certain things on the internet, and then I found that there was a condition called dystonia. And then I wondered, does what I'm experiencing fit that kind of pattern of symptoms that people have described? And it seemed very likely. That's why I decided to look into it further.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm really glad that you did that, because I mean, I know it's hard, when you first start experiencing symptoms. Some people wait a really long time before things get really
Yeah.
bad. But like I also, it was very gradual. So my first year of having what I call onset, which I didn't really think was that bad, I started to feel something wrong in my face. And I remember some of the horn players in the orchestra. I happened to try to ask my conductor, like,
Yeah.
can I drop down to the fourth horn? And I all of a sudden I dropped out of all these other ensembles. I wasn't playing in any other ensembles, and they said, we've played with you as our principal for so many years, and they're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, and I said, there's something wrong. And one of my friends said, I was in a practice room, and he came in and he said, well, can I kind of hear what's going on? And I showed him, and he was like, I don't, it doesn't sound that bad. Like he's like, I can tell you're struggling, but it doesn't sound bad at all. Like, and I said, yeah, but the thing is, I'm using so much physical taxation to keep this all together, to keep it in order. It's just too much. It's too taxing. And so I kind of had to just play that way and kind of, put a Band-Aid over it, for that first year. And nobody notices, because dystonia really affects you in the very subtle areas that you need those nuances.
Exactly. Yeah.
And nobody notices except for you in the beginning.
And the other thing I've noticed that's common is because as musicians we're so used to the feedback from the sound, and then we try and correct that. So then any kind of imperfection just gets like, somehow you cope and you manage to produce a decent sound, and no one notices the struggle behind it. And that's the problem. That is what makes it worse as time goes on.
Yeah, the feedback is a huge thing, because it's like, not only are you dealing with so many reactions to the sound, because it's like, oh wow, I sound bad, I need to fix it. But then you're also dealing with, this doesn't feel right, I need to fix it. And it's just it's really frustrating. Did you then talk to your teacher about it, and did they say anything to you?
Yes, I definitely talked to my teacher about it, but he also didn't really know what was going on, because I don't think he had a student with this issue before. So we kind of had to find out together. So I did get treatment for the dystonia. I went to see a doctor in Hanover in Germany, because I happened to be in Europe at the time, and it was just the perfect opportunity to meet with him. And I think I had a treatment that's fairly common for dystonia, and that's a small amount of Botox injected into like the relevant muscles. So I think a lot of people have had that treatment, but the for me, it didn't work that well, unfortunately.
Oh no. Yeah, it seems like it's kind of like hit or miss, and with the accuracy of what muscle and how much. Do you know when? Can you kind of talk us through just for a second when they did inject the Botox? Like, where was it, and like why did they put it in that specific area?
Right. So I think it was identified that what was causing the second finger to stay up was cramping in the third finger. So I don't know the technical terms, but the Botox was injected into the muscles affecting the third finger, so that it wouldn't cramp and leave the second finger hanging. But I also made a bit of a mistake after the treatment because I tried to get back into playing a bit too soon, perhaps. So
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. It's really difficult because it's like dystonia is one of those things where, we tell people all the time, like it's painless
yeah,
in the sense that it's like it's not pain, there's no pain. So you think that, you can just kind of play through it sometimes, but it actually ends up, just
exactly. Yeah.
making things worse. Well, I'm so sorry that the Botox didn't work. After you got that treatment, did you, and can I ask who the neurologist was in Germany or no?
Um, I wonder if I could tell you. Yes, it's Dr. Eckhart Altenmüller. He's fairly
Yeah,
famous. Yeah,
I thought maybe so. I was like, oh, I bet it was Eckhart.
yeah.
Yeah, I've had quite a few people over in Europe contacting me about
Hmm.
neurologists, and I'm like, you gotta go to him if you're anywhere near him.
Yeah.
He knows his stuff. But I was going to ask, in Australia, you probably don't have, do you have anyone there that you knew of that knew of focal dystonia, or anyone there can go to for
Yes.
diagnosis?
There is. Yes, I do remember talking to someone in Australia before I went to see Dr. Altenmüller, and that's Dr. Bronwyn Ackerman, who's also very well regarded for musicians' injuries. And actually, so she focuses on like physiotherapy type of treatments, and so she gave me certain like hand exercises to kind of cope with it at the beginning when it wasn't too serious. But yeah, as symptoms started to become more serious, I realized I needed a different kind of treatment.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because the physiotherapy can be a little tricky sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
because it's such an individual, I can't say that word,
Individual.
individualistic
Mm-hmm.
experience of what works and doesn't work. The drummer that I interviewed, he went to occupational therapists who
Okay.
they tried various things and they didn't work, and then she's like, I just want you now to just try walking around with a drumstick in your hand. Just walk
Mm-hmm.
around every day doing that, and don't focus on drumming, just walk around with it. And it really helped him. It tricked his brain back into I'm just holding a regular object.
Yeah.
So I understand it's really difficult to find the right treatment. Did you and did you know how did you, oh sorry, you did say you looked up the symptoms of focal dystonia.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Mm-hmm.
was going to ask you if you knew beforehand, but you already answered that. Sorry.
Yeah.
So since the Botox didn't work and you went to the physiotherapist, what happened after that? Did you find anything that helps you at all?
Well, I think it was both a really good thing and a really bad thing that it happened to me early. So the bad thing, of course, is that I knew that by 2014, when it was like, so this was after I had the Botox injection, and then even though I took it really, really easy on with regards to playing, so I didn't really do any concerts or anything, it was still a real struggle to get back into playing in a decent level. So I knew that I had to switch to something else. I could not realistically continue performing with this condition. And I know that people have had like repeated Botox injections, but I didn't like the sound of that, to be honest, because then you would, you'd have to be injected with that stuff and then put the violin down for a long time to let the muscle kind of rehabilitate, and it would be so kind of intrusive, I think.
Yeah, I completely understand what you mean. And it is a difficult decision to make. You know, some people it really helps them and they go that route, and some it's like, no, it didn't. You know,
Yeah.
it's not, I mean, I've had horn players that have been like, you know, I got Botox and then I got muscle atrophy in the
Right. Okay.
area, and it made things worse. So I stopped the treatment. And so I know it's really frustrating. So when you decided to go a different route, did you decide to then like learn a different instrument, or did you go into a different field?
Yeah, so that's what I've done. I've been studying maths for the last 5 years now. So ever since I decided to stop in 2014, the following year, 2015, I enrolled in a Bachelor of Science. And yeah, I've graduated with honors, and I'm actually doing research now, which is really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. That's really great. Is there a fly there?
There is a little fly in the room, yeah, because I had my windows open earlier. It's kind of a little bit annoying.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know
That's
how
all
you
right.
feel. You know, during one of my live streams, I had a fly going around too, and I was trying so hard to not let it
Yeah.
distract me, but it was, yeah, they're a pain. Well, I'm just really proud that you were able to go into this different area that you're passionate about. And I saw on your site that, yeah, you wrote a lot about math and stuff. So it's really
Yeah.
awesome that you're really passionate about it too. Yeah.
Of course, the downside is that I haven't really thought about violin playing in such a long time. So, um, and I guess for musicians who are dealing with dystonia, they really need to kind of spend a lot of time on the instrument to get back into playing. But I haven't been able to do that. So I think when people ask me, oh, like, how's the thing with the left hand going? Well, it kind of hasn't been going, to be pretty honest. So I guess I could spend more time to develop the left hand again, but I've just decided to take it easy for now with regards to music and not pressure myself into playing anything soon.
Yeah, I understand that decision as well, you know, and it's difficult because when you do have to set aside time to rehabilitate, it takes so much concentration and
Yeah,
so much
yeah,
physical effort and constantly being aware of what's working, what's not, and trying different things and, you know, talking to people. And it's just a whole new lifestyle of trying to get your playing back. And it can be really frustrating for people. And especially in the beginning, it's like sometimes it's good to take a break and
mhm,
like you, I as soon as I graduated, I had to quickly decide what else I wanted to do with my life. I was like, what area am I going to go in, and where what am I going to do for graduate
yeah,
school? So for me, I at first I wanted to do music therapy, and I ended up getting accepted to a master's program on the East Coast and went out there to visit school.
yeah,
And I don't know what it was immediately. As soon as I met the teachers and everything, I was like, I just know this isn't for me.
yeah,
And then I eventually ended up volunteering and teaching band kids, and I
mhm,
ended up going that route and going to graduate school and doing the whole teaching career thing as well. And that was a lot of fun, and it was a really great route to go down. But during those times, during that time when I was in Boulder, um, I tell people all the time, because some people will be like, wow, I can't believe it took you like so long to rehabilitate. It's like, well, first of all, rehabilitation is not like, there's no really timeline. You can't just be like, well, I'm going to recover in 2 years, so that's what it's going to
yeah,
be. And also life happens, and you have to make decisions and decide what is best for you to move forward with your life as well. It's not that, you know, you're giving up or you know, sometimes you just have to, you know, deal with the consequences of what's happened. And you know, I tell people, yeah, well, I just spent 4 or 5 years, you know, going to school again and teaching, and I haven't had
yeah,
time to rehabilitate more. Because some people
yeah.
will be like, oh, you know, you're so close to a full recovery, how come you haven't spent more time doing it? It's like, I haven't had time.
Yeah, I think that was exactly my situation, because I went into a Bachelor of Science completely unrelated to anything music. So yeah, I just didn't have the opportunity to get back into playing. So perhaps that's a missed opportunity. But then if I didn't like focus fully on the science and maths, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. So it's kind of, you have to make a choice at some point.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, and I'm proud of you in the direction you've gone as well. And just not only that, but just being able to speak out about your experience with dystonia too, because that's very important as well. And some of the musicians, when I reached out to everyone about doing this live talk series, some of them were like, well, I haven't recovered. And it's like, well, it's still important to talk about it,
Yeah.
whether you've recovered or not, because everybody deserves to be heard. Their story deserves to be heard. And you are a musician at heart. You still are a
Yeah,
musician,
definitely.
no matter what.
Yeah, I don't think you ever stop being a musician.
Yeah, that's
Um,
definitely true.
it's
Yeah.
actually easier to talk about the dystonia now because there's enough kind of time between when it happened, and also because in maths it's this idea of analyzing things in great detail, and I have the skill to do that now from a kind of objective way.
Yeah.
I
And,
look
and
back on the things that I did well and things that I could have done better.
yeah, and I'm sure even just studying music has really helped you, and just going through this experience as well has helped you be able to be even more like disciplined in the other area you went
Yeah.
into. Because I
Yeah, I
hear,
agree with that. Yeah.
yeah. Well, with the hand dystonia, I was gonna ask you a question, going back to it.
Mhm.
And I can't remember now. I should have wrote it down. I was gonna ask you, uh, yeah, when you got hand dystonia, I was gonna ask you, did you, like you said, you knew someone that had it, but have you come across a lot of people that have had it since?
Yes, a few people. I talked to a pianist some time ago. I think it was last year. Well, actually, when I first got it, I didn't know anyone. But then, of course, as I started looking into the disorder a bit more, then and I started to reach out to more people, then I came into contact with people who had dystonia. So in particular, I remember a cellist who I spoke to, is a New Zealand cellist, and he had it in his right hand. So that is not quite the same as the issues of the left hand, but still he could, emphasize with the struggle of this disorder affecting affecting my playing. I think the right hand dystonia is quite interesting because there's no kind of like delicate movement here, but his dystonia happens when he tries to like sustain a long note, and then it would start shaking, if I remember his symptoms correctly.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, but the underlying theme is still the same. It's just a loss of control of something that you used to do very well. So yeah, so he could certainly empathize with that. So I still learn quite a lot from speaking to him.
Oh wow. And I think that's really great that you were able to find another string player as well
Yeah.
that had it. Yeah. And I was gonna also ask, with your hand dystonia, did over time since you've taken time off from it, is it still quite the same, or have you seen it change over time? Has it gotten worse? Has it carried over to anything?
Well, in some sense, it's gone worse because I simply haven't picked up the instrument for a long time. But I think that's been a very good thing because that means that I can completely refresh my approach to violin playing. And I try and pick up the violin fairly regularly. So I've made a promise to myself that I would, have the violin in hand for about 10 to 15 minutes. And I try to do this every day. Even if I don't play anything with the bow, but just to get the left hand used to the instrument and kind of make friends with it once more. And yeah, I managed to change the whole setup that I play with. So before I used to have a shoulder rest, like many violinists, but now I can quite comfortably pick up the instrument without, and I just feel kind of a bit more relaxed with this new setup.
Oh, that's really good. That's really awesome. Yeah, I know. I know that with Dystonia, you have to change so much about the way you do
Mhm.
things, and it's almost taboo. It's like the things you have to
Yeah,
do to play again. It's like if you were taking lessons with someone, they would just probably keel over and die just
yeah,
watching what
exactly.
you're doing. um, yeah, and it's one of those things where it's just a lot of experimentation and listening to your body. Um, did your dystonia then carry over to anything like as far as like writing or picking certain objects up or doing certain tasks like typing?
No, I think that's a really good thing, and I'm lucky that it's this way, that it has never affected any other thing in my life. It's always just been, the connection between my brain and what happens when I pick up the violin.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is really good. Yeah, because I feel like I've come across quite a few people who have the focal hand dystonia, and then that carries over to writer's cramp or just basic everyday
Mhm.
things, so.
Some people have wondered whether it's different if I pick up the viola or guitar or some, similarly stringed instrument. But no, unfortunately, it's still the same because, I'm reminded of that feeling between the finger and the string, and then that kind of triggers everything. So,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's and even with guitar then too.
well, with the guitar, it's a little bit different because of the whole setup. So in some sense, it's better. But then as soon as I try to, put the fingers down the string, it kind of feels unnatural again.
Oh no.
Yeah, but that's slowly getting better. I've thought
Oh,
of ways to kind of make that transition easier.
oh, that's
Yeah,
good. Yeah, there's been I know with writer's cramp they have to deal with a lot of like texture type retraining, like whether
yeah.
it's retraining with braille, retraining with just feeling the dominoes, like being able to feel the
Oh,
individual
okay. Yeah,
uh, bumps on everything. Because there is a little bit of sensory discrimination that's not there with the signal being sent.
yeah.
So
I've
it's like,
definitely read about that. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a really interesting, just really, dystonia is very strange. It's a very, very strange disorder to have.
And I think for violinists and or pianists as well, there is something in the kind of spatial awareness that gets messed up. Like your left hand doesn't feel distances the same way as your right hand. And I certainly understand why that would be a thing because when you pick up the fiddle, then in the left hand it's like certain things feel too cramped while other things feel kind of a bit too wide, whereas before the dystonia happened, like none of these things would have caused any issue.
Yeah, yeah, I completely relate there. With Amish dystonia, it's hard to describe but it's of course similar
Okay.
because it's a dystonia, but a focal dystonia, but yeah, it's task specific again. So it's like very like I can play in my mid to high range or pedal register, but I can't play in my middle register, which is the most easiest register to play
Right.
in.
Okay.
And then sometimes I have like over excessive, just like the hyperextension, over excessive puckering or like
Hmm.
or too much collapsing, like too much letting go. And I have it where it's from side to side, so it's like one part of my face, the muscles are like not contracting in the way they need to, and the other side is like compensating for that lack of
Yeah.
and then also the trying to control the contractions going on at the same time. It's just like so much happening in these little muscles, and so and I also relate with the spatial awareness as well, because with embouchure dystonia, it's like you go to play and it's like you just can't figure. It's like your lips don't know how to grab the note, not
Yeah,
just grab the note,
exactly.
but they don't give you feedback as to whether it doesn't pick up on where the note is. So it's like almost like if somebody had put like a clear piece of glass right between me and my mouthpiece.
Okay.
It's like I can't feel the rim, and it's so strange because it's like I can feel the rim obviously,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
as far as like feeling the rim, like where I need to grab it to get the note to come out, my mouth just won't adjust or grab the note. My muscles won't do it, and no matter how much air I use, it won't work. And it's just and I tell people I feel like you know, I don't know how to describe this. When I play horn before, it's like I felt the note like it was like right here. It's like I felt like I was grabbing a little ball. But with dystonia, it feels like I'm trying to grab something that's way out here. Like I'm trying to grab it. It's
Right.
way far
Okay.
away. Mhm.
Yeah, I
So it's,
definitely understand where that's from. Even though the instruments are so different, it's really interesting that how we experience it can be so similar.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I
it's
find
definitely
really, really
strange.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm always I love that there's so much research done on hand dystonia, because there's not too much done on embouchure dystonia, but the hand dystonia ones have really helped a lot because I can definitely relate when I read it. It's like, wow,
Mhm.
that's very similar.
I think with the hand stone, it's just more visible. So unfortunately, it kind of gets more attention in the studies. You know, because like everyone knows something's going wrong if you see a pianist playing with curled fingers, which is a very common symptom. Um,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the embouchure dystonia, we get really shaky at some point, but underneath the shakiness, there's also a lot of movement going on in
right.
the inside of the face, a lot of little muscles that are just going crazy. Um, well, Jonathan, I'm just really happy that you're here today and that we're talking about this. I mean, it's really important, and I really am happy that I'm able to do this during the quarantine because I mean, it's such
Yeah.
an important thing to talk about and speak out about. And I'm just so glad I came across you as well.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
it's really nice to be a part of this kind of larger project where we bring more awareness to various kinds of dystonia.
yeah, and before we go, I also want to ask, like you said, you haven't been playing violin for a while, but
Yeah.
do you do you do anything to also like kind of just like any massage work still, or any type of work on the hand away from the violin?
No, not so much actually. Because I never felt any pain from playing. What I have done is slowly kind of get the hand used to the feeling of the violin again. Um, and I think many people use what's called a sensory trick. I think this is very well known for people who have had dystonia. Like for the violin, for example, you can wear a glove on the left hand and everything magically feels better. Um, but of course, that is a temporary trick, and I didn't want to continue tricking the brain. So now I just play with like as natural as it can be with the setup. And I also found out that I should be kind of more forgiving to the left hand and just let things go wrong, because then it kind of naturally gets into a more relaxed position. So it's like before, because if you're preparing as a professional violinist, everything has to be like so perfect and exact. But now it's like, well, it doesn't have to be exact. I just want it kind of roughly there. And then that attitude has actually helped me approach the violin again.
Oh, that's really great. Yeah, I definitely agree with you because the body it will guide you through the process if you allow it. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, you know, is having dystonia, is letting go of the control, the need to control it, and get out of the way so the body can adjust and do what it needs to do. um, and exactly with the relaxation thing too. I was speaking with a Kiko Trush, who's a piano player
Okay.
with focal hand dystonia, and she has a YouTube channel called the Mindful Pianist, and she was talking about how yeah, she has to she's talking about how to observe the hand, like, you know, like a child, how they open and close the hand in one of her videos. And I said, you know, that's really interesting because when I try to rehabilitate, one of the first things I thought was like, well, you know, I'm so used to using, when we talk about the orbicularis, aorist, and embouchure, we think about, oh, we just play in this one little tiny spot.
Yeah.
As a French horn player, we just have this tiny mouthpiece and it goes right here and everything comes down to this one area. But I thought, well, that can't be true. Maybe my whole body is involved in some way. And maybe there's some way I can figure out how to use different muscle groups in my face that I'm not using typically. And I thought, well, what's the most natural way to blow air out of your lips, just as a normal person? Because I noticed that when I try to do it, if somebody said, well, hey, blow out this candle, I would naturally set my embouchure. I would just go
right
and
okay.
set my corners. And then I thought, well, you know, little kid, when they blow a candle, they're just like, and they puff their cheeks up. And that's just natural. They just naturally do what their body feels is the best way to get it done. And so I had to start doing that, just using very loose type of playing, very loose lips, and really just, you know, it sounded horrible. It sounded so bad.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest barriers for me when I start thinking about, you know, practicing again, because I know it's going to sound so bad, but then I have to kind of deal with that separately. So right now I really don't care what it sounds like. I'm concerned about having the right setup and, you know, making the hand do what it's naturally supposed to do. So yeah, so I've got over that kind of fear of sounding terrible.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work to get over that. You know, it's really ingrained in us that we have to be perfect, especially if we want to make it as professionals.
Yeah.
We think of perfection and I think it's interesting because, you know, they say in the research that, you know, the musicians that have dystonia are perfectionists. It's like, well, I don't know any musician that's serious that isn't a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know anyone that's, you know, I've never been like, yeah, I guess I'll just practice whenever I feel like it, you know, and go about my day. You know, I definitely was, you know, going for what I want to do. But it is hard to get over those barriers too, because I was telling the trumpet player in the last interview, he said, yeah, it's so hard to get over the not just the way you sound, but also the way you look too, because it's like you look at what's going on, you're like, oh, it's just embarrassing. Like, I don't want to, you know, and you start thinking negative things, and you start to back away, and you start to compensate and do things that you shouldn't be doing. And it's a snowballs into this huge mess, you know. It's like, oh boy, got to step back and reassess what I can do. And so, yeah, I know it's just such a difficult journey too, but I'm really glad that you found your own way, and you found another area that you can work in as well, and that, you know, you're able to speak out about this too. So I'm just really, really grateful for it. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. But I have to stress that kind of my approach is certainly very unusual. So I think for most people, they would who have had dystonia, they would probably be in the middle of a musical career, and then it's very different the way that they have to approach it, because they have to think about, you know, how to make a living still. Whereas, yeah, as I said before, because it happened to me fairly young, it was both a great thing and a bad thing. So the bad thing was that I couldn't continue as a musician in terms of a career, but I was still young enough to be able to switch to something else. So I'm very grateful for that, even though it was a really hard decision.
Yeah, and yeah, it is rare to get it when you're young, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Can you say how young you were? Or
yeah. So that was around 2012. So I was probably like 21 or something like that. Yeah, 21, 22. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're just like
unusual. Yeah.
right at the beginning. Oh my gosh. Wow. You know, I always hear people, they'll tell me, they'll be like, well, the younger you are, the better it is to get it. But I feel like it's just bad to get anything.
I don't think so. Yeah. Maybe there's more chance that the brain can adapt. So maybe that's what they're getting at, but it's not any easier, I don't think.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I've in the Dystonia group on Facebook, I know there are a lot of guitar players in it, and it's interesting because I feel like there's such a overwhelming amount of musicians that have hand dystonia versus musicians that have embouchure dystonia or any other form of dystonia. And the guitarists in the group, they're always showing like what they're doing as far as rehabilitating, and they use like a lot of them have found splinting really successful for them, but I have never heard of a string player trying that, like splinting the
Okay, so
fingers.
they attach something to the second finger or whatever finger that's affected.
Yeah, and they'll kind of go back and forth between the dystonic finger and the non-dystonic. Like they'll work a lot on the dystonic one, and then they'll switch to the other one and kind of just be aware of what's happening.
Okay. No,
And I know,
I don't think I've tried that myself, but I can see the logic behind it because I remember, I think this is related to a piece of advice that I got, and it's to play on the finger with very flat fingers like this, right? Because then there's no dystonia, whatever, for some strange reason. I mean, you can't play the violin this way, but it's a good way to start kind of getting used to that feeling of the fingers on the strings again. So maybe it's related to that.
yeah, I think so. And you know, it's interesting seeing their recovery process, because some of them, you know, and I feel so bad for musicians, that any musicians that get this, because they go through so much great struggle to just, some people will make their own homemade splints, and some will go out and find someone that makes them for them or purchase it somewhere. And it just seems like I feel, this is why it's so important to talk about this, because I really want future generations to have a better chance of just, you know, even if there's not a cure still down the road, like just a chance of knowing what people have done as far as trying to recover and trying those things, going down that route. Sorry.
That's all right.
That's the first time I've had to take a drink. Well, Jonathan, I'm just really happy to have you here and really happy to talk to you about this. And I have to say, you're the first Australian. Well, no, you're not the first Australian I've met that's had dystonia. You're the first string player I've met, though.
Oh, okay.
As far as in person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Well, Jonathan, do you have anything else that you want to speak about?
At the moment, I think no, that's all right. And I think, yeah, what I found interesting during our conversation is, as I said, even though embouchure dystonia is so different from the stuff relating to the hand and fingers, it's interesting how the experience is the same, and the kind of the loss of the kind of spatial awareness, or the feeling of loss of control of something about, and the connection to the musical sound as well.
Yeah, it's the spatial awareness thing really gets me, just because it's like, I can't describe it to anybody. You know, the best analogy I've come up with is, imagine if your leg fell asleep, but you didn't know it fell asleep. And you stood up to go and walk, and lo and behold, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, why is my body not helping me out here? I don't feel anything.
Actually, yeah, just before we go, there's just one thing that I would like to know, and I wonder if, you know, people in the comments will share their insight on this. But when you listen to music, do you feel any tension or anything like in the embouchure?
Oh, like recordings of horn playing?
Yeah, especially of horn playing.
That's interesting that you say that. My first couple of years of rehabilitating, it was really hard to listen to other horn players or horn playing. Not only because it made me sad, but yeah, because I would, you know, whenever they did a specific like pattern or a certain register, it's almost like I could sense the dystonia that's in my face, even though I wasn't playing the horn. Yeah, it's really weird. And but I had to do a lot of like telling myself this is okay, this is all right, and you know, like it's okay if it feels the way it happens. But yeah, it is a very strange phenomenon. Did you feel that too then?
Yeah, definitely. And actually, I think one of the downsides of working some field that's totally different is that I don't listen to music as much as I used to. But I mean, that's not a big deal for me because I always think about music anyway. But yeah, it's just one of the side effects. I haven't listened to music very often. But now when I listen to music, I don't get that tension from before. So I think something has definitely changed in the brain.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's really good. Yeah. You know, I tell people, I said, if you can get to a place where you can listen to another instrumentalist of your same instrument and not, you know, have a breakdown, you
Yeah.
know, mentally or physically, you're in a good place to
Yeah.
rehabilitate. But yeah, I definitely, and Dystonia is really strange because what also other people have experienced too is like they might they might do something like, especially the ones that have segmental dystonia where it's in another
Okay.
limb, they might go to do something with that limb and then they'll feel it mirror in the other hand. So they might do something with this hand and they'll feel it in the other hand
Okay.
or another area of the body, the dystonia. And then also sometimes it will just show up in really weird ways. Like Dr. Farias, his online platform he does for recovery, he does this uh, guided visualization thing of the body. And what happens is it shows a picture of just an anatomy of a body, and it will kind of scan this green kind of light over different areas of the body. You're just
Yeah.
supposed to kind of focus on those areas of your body that you're watching. And I had a friend that said, you know, that has cervical dystonia in the neck,
Okay.
and they said, you know, when it started scanning over the neck, she's like, I kid you not, my cervical dystonia kicked in. She's like, I started experiencing the symptoms.
Oh, wow. That is, yeah. That sounds totally reasonable, but also kind of very unusual at the same time. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really weird how that, yeah, how that happens. Just
yeah,
the act of like visualizing the problematic area.
yeah, it really is. And it carries over to weird things too. So like, I'm glad that it hasn't carried over to other things for you. For me in the beginning, I guess mine wasn't as severe as some people, but it definitely carried over to if I try to drink out of like a water bottle with the little
Oh, okay.
opening,
Yeah.
I would shake so much. I couldn't drink out of the bottle because I
Hmm.
couldn't keep it on my face. Drinking out of those little coffee lids, I couldn't do that.
Okay.
You know, anything, you
That
know,
kind of
anything.
resembled an embouchure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so
Mm.
awful. I was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I gonna do? Like, and I literally had to learn a new way to drink during the first couple of years. Like, I
Okay.
literally had to go like on the side of my mouth or like kind of like poke my lower lip out and then like, you know, the whole like open your mouth and then
Yes, exactly.
like,
Mm.
um and the drummer that I interviewed, he said the same thing happened to him where when it carried over to his hand in daily tasks, he would go to brush his teeth and he'd feel the dystonia in his hand as he tried to brush his teeth.
Okay. Yeah.
He tried to cut food with a knife and he
Hmm.
was like, I can't have this. I can't have this
Yeah.
carrying the daily tasks. It's so awful. So I'm really glad that you didn't experience that. So like, it's very
Yeah, I
good.
think I'm lucky that I've been spared the kind of side effects in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, Jonathan, it's been so great speaking to you, and I don't want to keep you overboard on time because I don't know if you have something else to do, but I hope that you're staying safe during this quarantine, and I'm just really
Thank
glad
you.
that you found the time to be here too.
No, it's my pleasure. I think it was a very useful to have this discussion. I hope, many people will see this series of talks.
Yeah, I really hope so too in the future. I hope other people can reference them as well and find some type of solace in it. Just even hearing other people's experiences really helps because it's a very lonely journey. You know, even if you meet
Yeah,
other musicians
exactly.
that have it, it's really lonely. It's like you just want someone to understand you, and
Hmm.
you don't have someone there every day that understands what you're going through. So it's difficult, and it affects our lives in different ways. You know, it can even affect your relationships too. Like it's like
I can
poor
imagine.
significant
Yeah.
others, like
Hmm.
I can't handle this anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Jonathan, I'm just really glad that you're able to be here. And after the live stream, what's going to happen is I'm going to upload this to YouTube and I'll
Okay.
send you a YouTube link so you can share it with people if you want
Okay.
to. and it's more accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'll definitely.
Yeah, I
Oh,
could
sorry,
link
go ahead.
it on my blog, right? I can, the YouTube link, I mean.
Yeah, you
Okay,
definitely can.
okay,
Hmm.
yeah, that would be good,
Yep.
thanks.
Yeah, you'll be able to do that, and I'll also add it onto my website too and blog as well.
Okay,
So, and Jonathan, before we go, I have one last question.
yeah,
Let's say that another violinist that has the same type of dystonia in their left hand comes to you and says, "Hey, I was just diagnosed." What
okay.
would be some of your general advice that you would give them? Was there any type of general advice you would give them?
Yeah, so I would definitely think about what kind of treatment is suitable for them, you know, whether they want to do the Botox treatment, which has worked for a lot of people, I have to say. I'm not kind of discounting that completely, but they have to really think about, you know, and plan ahead for that kind of treatment. Otherwise, if they feel that's not for them, then they really have to think about kind of having rather, I would say, restoring that kind of connection to the instrument, and, you know, trying not to hate your violin anymore, and trying to approach it from a different way. Yeah, that would be my general advice.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very good advice. Good words of wisdom as well, especially with the learning to love your instrument again.
Mhm.
I mean, that's very hard to do when it feels
Yeah.
like it's betrayed you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think at one point well, I know at one point I tried to sell my horn.
Yeah.
I definitely did. So, anyways, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna let you go now, so I can go have dinner and you can carry on with your day.
Yeah. Okay.
And thank you for again for this huge time distance just being here. I'm really, really happy that you did this, and I just thank you so much. And I honor your journey and everything you've been through. So, I just really am grateful.
Well, thanks very much, and it's great to have me on this series of talks.
All right, Jonathan, I'll talk to
Okay.
you soon.
Yeah. See you later. Bye.
Bye.